Pit of Snakes, an ancient Persian punishment. The sun of Persia burned white that day. Not gold, not warm, but white, as if the heavens themselves had been bleached by the weight of judgment. In the court of Artaxerxes, the air hung heavy with the scent of myrrh and iron. The royal banners stirred slightly in the wind, their silk edges whispering the words no man dared to speak aloud. That justice, in the empire of the King of Kings, was not mercy, it was order. I was the royal chronicler, charged to record what men should remember, and what they must fear. When the guards came for me that morning, I knew something grave had occurred. Not another border rebellion, not a tax dispute in the provinces. This was something the great king wanted the world to remember, something to be written. We were led to the old citadel outside Susa, where the desert stone cracked and the air shimmered like smoke. There, behind the walls that no commoner had ever seen, lay a courtyard paved in pale limestone, a place reserved for divine retribution. In the center, a pit round, black, and ancient. The air above it rippled with heat, and from its depths came the faintest sound, like the rustle of silk upon sand. They called it the Pit of Snakes. The practice was older than Persia itself, a relic of Elamite kings and forgotten gods. When the empire absorbed the lands of old, it absorbed their terrors too. The pit was said to be sacred once, a chasm through which divine justice descended. Now it was a place where men's crimes were sent to die. The condemned was already there. His name was Oroxes, once a satrap of Lydia, accused of betrayal. He had stolen tribute meant for the king's treasury, not gold or silver, but grain and salt, rations meant for the army of the West. Because of his greed, men starved on the frontier, and Artaxerxes' wrath was as sure as sunrise. Oroxes had been found hiding among his own soldiers, wearing the rags of a footman. They brought him to Susa in chains, his beard uncut, his eyes wild. For 3 days he begged the king for mercy. On the 4th he cursed him instead. That sealed his fate. When Artaxerxes entered the courtyard, the soldiers dropped to their knees. His robe shimmered like molten bronze. His face was calm, unreadable. Only his eyes, sharp and black as obsidian, betrayed the storm within. The king spoke not to the condemned, but to us, to the scribes, priests, and officers who watched from the edge of the courtyard. "Let it be known," he said, his voice a measured thunder, "that betrayal poisons the roots of empire, and poison shall meet its kin." At his signal, the guards lifted the stone cover of the pit. A foul breath rose from below, hot and alive. The sound from within grew louder, a chorus of sliding scales and quiet hisses. Even the soldiers took a step back. I had heard stories that the pit was kept alive, that priests fed it offerings of milk and incense to keep the serpents calm until the day of use. It was not a place of slaughter, they said, but of divine reconciliation, where the serpent spirits of the earth judged the wicked as the gods once had. Oroxes stood trembling. His voice broke as he turned to the king. "My lord," he cried, "I served your father. I sent tribute for years without fail. Spare me, and I will repay all that I have taken." Artaxerxes raised his hand. "The debt is not of silver," he said. "It is of faith." And then, to the guards, "Let the pit have him." The men obeyed in silence. Chains clinked. Dust rose. The condemned was lowered down, vanishing into the black circle. His shouts turned to echoes, then to whispers. Then there was nothing but the faint stirring of scales. The priests chanted prayers in Old Persian, their voices rising with the wind. The king turned away, his face unmoved. To him, this was not cruelty. It was balance. As royal chronicler, I wrote the account by evening light. But what I saw that day did not leave me. When the king retired, I remained in the courtyard, staring into that dark pit. I thought of what the priests had told me long ago, that the snakes were not beasts, but the memory of a god long forgotten, the remnant of something older than kings or men. The empire stretched from the Aegean to the Indus, but beneath all its gold, its palaces and laws, there was always this fear. A quiet understanding that the king ruled not just by the sword or by divine favor, but by the certainty that there was no crime without consequence. For days afterward, the guards said they heard the pit breathing. Some said it was the wind caught in the stone, others that the snakes themselves were whispering the name of their latest offering. When I delivered my account to the king, he read it in silence. Then he said, "Write that Persia does not forget." So I did. And when, years later, I became old and frail, I returned once more to that citadel outside Susa. The pit was still there, sealed now with a stone disc. The guards told me it had not been opened in a generation, that the king preferred other punishments, more visible, more efficient. But I stood by it, feeling the heat of the earth beneath my sandals, and I wondered if, beneath that stone, the serpents still moved, if they still remembered the voice of the king, and the sins of those who fed them. In the empire of Artaxerxes, nothing was ever truly buried. Not gold, not guilt, not fear. Only silence remained.